from New York, it's the Gary Null Show. And now, your host, Gary Null.
Hi, everyone. I'm Gary Null. Today, we're going to be looking at how the media refuses to report the news fairly, what is called the smear, by Cheryl Atkinson. Also, we're going to take you inside of a scientific committee of the government to show you the complete folly of any credible scientific evidence that they've proven a vaccine safe before they pass it. I want you to listen carefully what they have to say. I'll report on it after you hear it. Also, we're going to take a look at the truths behind Walmart's brainwashing campaign and meeting the enemy. This is a feminist who comes to terms with men's rights movement, and it's about time. And I wish other people would be as honest and straightforward as she is. She's at a TED conference, and she unfolds her story slowly, but by the time she gets to the end of it, it's powerful. It's a lesson that we all need to hear today. But we always start our program with the latest on healing. I'm very concerned, as I mentioned yesterday, that the messages that are not being given any attention at all within our school system and within the youth of America, making sure that guns are dealt with, that there is a ban on certain type of weapons, absolutely I support that. To have a national movement on it, I support that. I do not support this firebrand. There is no reason for him to make such irresponsible statements without being challenged. And now he seems to be the current love child of the internet and of the media. No one is saying, before you make a statement, A, are you aware that making it with some sensibility of looking at the facts, the truth, could help you support your statement? This just unbridled narcissism, common for that generation. I'll deal with that today also. But I'm concerned that no one at all, at any level in America, not the Surgeon General, not the U.S. Public Health Service, not the USDA that has oversight on food, not our school systems, no one's paying attention to why we have a nation that is so morbidly obese. 40% of all adults are obese. And that means they have a body mass index above 30. But what if you're 29, 28, 27? You're still very overweight. If you took all the people who are overweight and obese, it's almost 70%. That is going to lead to heart disease, cancer, depression, stroke, and diabetes. Big killers. According to Case Western Reserve University, it is also in young adults. In fact, they have a new article that says that obesity is shifting cancer to young adults. Now, we've never had an epidemic of cancer in young adults. Now it's getting there. In fact, they examined evidence from 100 peer-reviewed publications, and they found that 13 different cancers in young adults are now increasing. And they found that they have one thing in common, and that is they're overweight. Now, cancer typically is associated with older adults, over 50, and now we're seeing increasingly it is in young adults. Of the 20 most common cancers in the United States, 9 are now reported in young adults. In fact, 1 in 10 new breast cancer cases and 1 in 4 thyroid are in young people. And that's according to the peer-reviewed journal Obesity. The data show that with obesity rising among younger demographics, so are cancer rates. And the new review integrates all the clinical studies, the public health data, to help explain rising cancer rates. And it is, quote, a pandemic, according to the study, that promotes cancer when you're overweight. Now, you've heard me mention many times on this program that it is not humanly possible. It is simply impossible to be overweight and to be healthy. You may look fine. You could run a marathon. You could seem in all ways to be okay. But you have more oxidative stress. You have more free radicals. You have more inflammatory processes. You have greater pressure upon your heart. None of that will you see. No doctor can find that in a normal, regular exam. You have to have special testing to determine that. But all the evidence shows that. And young people with a body mass index over 30 are more likely to experience aggressive cancers. That's according to the professor of experimental medicine at the center and colleagues. And obesity can permanently alter a young person's likelihood of developing cancer. Even after losing weight, cancer risk remains. Quote, if you are obese, you're at a higher risk of cancer. If you lose weight, it improves the prognosis and may lower your risk, but it never goes away completely. End quote. Why? It's simple. Obesity causes changes in a person's DNA that can add up over time. And these changes include genetic flags and markers, and you've heard me mention epigenetic. Epi, E-P-I, genetic, G-E-N, meaning larger environment that your gene is exposed to. And there are modifications, and that increases your risk, and that can remain your entire life, even after you've lost weight. It's no different in one respect than stopping smoking after you smoke for 20 years. 20 years later, you develop lung cancer, and you're confused. I recently asked a person that I know, how are you doing? Oh, I'm doing great. Got my medical reports back, no cancer. I said, that's not what I ask. I ask, how are you doing? Now, why that is important, because this particular person I've given hours and hours of input to about it's not just the disease that is diagnosed that you should be concerned about. It is everything else in your life that manifests in disease, even if the one disease has been taken care of. So you could have this phenomena where you had cancer, overcome your cancer, and die of a heart attack, die of a stroke, die of an embolism, end up with, let's say, diabetes. It happens all the time. And that's why we have to get away from this monotheistic construct of health. What do I mean? Monotheistic is single-minded, where you have one pursuit, overcome one disease. That doesn't mean that in the process you are now happy. You have resolved the relationship you're in. You've resolved the work environment you're in. You've resolved the kind of people you're allowing in your life, where you're living. Are you living near a nuclear power plant? Well, that's not going to work for you. And all you had to do is look at the statistics of people living within 50 miles of a nuclear power plant and look at the thyroid cancer spiking. In fact, there was a woman who contacted me about 20 years ago. Her name was Merrill, of Merrill Lynch. And she had seen the work I'd done on cancer. She watched a documentary I did, a 6-hour documentary on cancers. And she said, could you take a look at some data? I said, sure. And the data was, just by going up and down the streets near where she lived, she found a high percentage of women who had thyroid cancer and breast cancer, but had no known risk factors, meaning there was no smoking and drinking, none of the things you could say can contribute to either thyroid or breast cancer. But they all had something in common. They all lived within 5 miles of a nuclear power plant. She also had cancer. Her daughter had cancer. And so I decided to do another documentary on cancer, and specifically to look at the impact of radiation. And one of the studies that I wrote, in fact, I wrote a study on this along with Dr. Ernest Sternglass, who I believe just passed last year, one of America's leading authorities on the dangers of low-level radiation. And there were 3 of us who wrote an article, including a radiation expert. And it was about every time a nuclear power plant closes and is decommissioned, the cancer rate in that area drops substantially, over 50%. But in every city in America where there's a nuclear power plant, breast cancer increases, as does thyroid cancer. And we showed all the graphs and the charts, and we published it and put it out to the American people, and it had some interesting feedback, and that was it. Like so many articles and so many other things, you may catch a wave of interest or you may not. And so when I explain to people, in order to be healthy, you have to look at each piece of the puzzle, not just one piece. And that's why when I help people, I help them on every level. Everything that needs to be addressed, challenged, changed. Then you're no longer dealing in the epigenetics of your conditioning. You're dealing in a multifactorial approach. So that's why when kids are looking at one thing and nothing else. So you're looking at gun control, but you're not looking at whether or not you're overweight. Or the person in your school, the persons in your school that have diabetes, arthritis, heart disease, and cancer, and they're not even 13 yet. Pull back far enough to look at everything. Then ask yourself, what can I do to change this? Also, University of Illinois studies showed that prenatal choline, C-H-O, lean, L-I-N-E, that's a very important energizer, increases the gray and white matter in the brain in this study. And choline should be taken along with inositol, generally 500 milligrams a day, and a B complex, generally 25 to 50 milligrams a day. And that can help our brain. Now, that also means that older people over the age of 50 should be making sure you get your choline and inositol. That's with an I-N-O-S. Inositol and choline, equal amounts every day to help your brain. Also, there's a study from the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia that talked about preclinical testing suggests some antioxidants may be effective in treating mitochondrial disease. What's a mitochondrial disease? Well, the mitochondria, mito, M-I-T-O, chondria, C-H-O-N-D-R-I-A-L, are the energy factories of our cells. That's what provides the energy. There's a process, it's called ATP adenosine triphosphate. That's the combustion. It's like throwing wood into a furnace or fireplace. It's what causes the energy in the cell. And as we age, mitochondria die. They're not repaired or replaced, which they can be. And as a result, we start to lose energy. Brain energy creates brain fog and forgetfulness, and heart energy loss can create serious heart conditions, muscle energy loss. You're fatigued by even doing minimal things. And then you throw on top of that Lyme's disease, and you really have a problem. By the way, very shortly, meaning within the next month, I'm working with a small group of people with Lyme's disease and a group of board-certified physicians on a new protocol I have to reverse Lyme's disease. I'm doing it twice and then turning it over to some other people to do, a separate group of physicians, and I will report on the results within the next 6 months because I'm also looking at chronic fatigue syndrome and Lyme's disease. I believe we can overcome both, but not with the program that we have now. So we want to increase our mitochondria. Now, there are certain things that absolutely help that, such as some of the best, D-ribose, R-I-B-O-S-E, ribose, 1,000 milligrams, glutamine, 2,000 to 3,000 milligrams. And that really helps the gut mitochondria. And then probiotics also help the good bacteria like sauerkraut or beets. And then coenzyme Q10 is a superstar of helping your mitochondria, especially your heart and your brain. And potassium also helps. Vitamin C helps. And amla berries, A-M-L-A, amla berries, that also helps. simple things we can do, but this study found that N-acetylcysteine, NAC, N-A-C-E, titled T-Y-L, cysteine, C-Y-S-T-E-I-N-E, NAC, plus vitamin E, quote, showed compelling results in mitochondrial disease models. So that's important. NAC, 500 milligrams, and vitamin E, 100 to 200 units, can make a difference. They also mentioned coenzyme Q10 as specifically targeting the mitochondria, improving the health of the laboratory in this. So, also, University of Rome, which is in Italy, had a multi-biomarker analysis of antioxidant efficacy of normal aging. It's very complex, what they're talking about, but they were specifically talking about neurodegenerative-related disease like Parkinson's disease, one of the most common oxidative stress-associated pathologies in aging. And they're wanting to look for chemicals or drugs that could help improve that, what is called the combined therapy of L-DOPA plus an inhibitor of DOPA decarbonylase, such as what is called carbidopa. I don't support that at all. I have not seen them cure anyone, and yet we've repeatedly been able to reverse Parkinson's and multiple sclerosis. And so they are correct that antioxidants can be extremely important. And see, picture this. Picture Pac-Man. It goes through and it gobbles up whatever is in front of it. Now picture that you have about 60 different types of these in your blood, such as macrophages and basophiles and neutrophils and phagocytes. So when you're taking antioxidants, you're stimulating them, just like you stimulate a greater activity of natural killer cells. When a free radical is going against a cell, it can damage it. Free radicals are caused by inflammation. So when you take vitamin C, vitamin E, alpha-lipoic acid, they're able to attach to that free radical and it neutralizes them. And that's why the more antioxidants you take throughout the day, I believe we should be taking antioxidants 6 times a day. And if you take it 6 times a day, then it's good for about 3 hours in your system. Some might be 4 hours, others a little less. But that means that 24/7, your body's being protected by the antioxidants you've taken. They're trapping free radicals. And that reduces the damage to the DNA, and that reduces inflammatory damage to the organ, the brain, the eyes, the heart. So they're just showing that these multi-biomarker analysis of antioxidant efficacy of normal aging, they're agreeing with this, and that's good for them. Also, finally, from Texas Tech University, published in Psychological Science, childhood friendships have some health benefits in adulthood. I'm sure many of you think back with fondness of some of your early childhood friends, and let us all hope that you still have some of those friends. But we go through transitions in life, and best friends go their own separate way, and sometimes they have a way of coming back into that. And I'm a big believer, by the way, that life cycles are capable of reconnecting at different times under different conditions if you have changed, are able to appreciate the people in your life for who they are in the moment they're in, and share what you can. We can't go back to what we were as kids. We've gone through many transitions and many relationships since then. We've experienced many of the realities of the world we never knew we would have to face. We never fully appreciated what our parents were experiencing because our parents, more often than not, protected us from knowing all of the hardships and crises that they were dealing with. They kept most of that to themselves. It wasn't shared. After all, what could we do to help them? We didn't have the intellect, we didn't have the financial resources, we didn't have all we would have done is feel bad. And that, of course, would not have been good for us, and it wouldn't change anything. So I certainly understand why parents sometimes simply don't share everything with a child, because you have to ask, how would that impact the person that's hearing this information? But friends try to share as much as they can at different times in life, and then we grow older, and then maybe we're 40, and we haven't seen a friend since 10, or since high school. And then what are we at in that? Where are we at? What do we believe in? Who are we? Are we just a careerist? Do we just have a job? Are we in a relationship? What is the purpose of that relationship? And suddenly someone comes back into our life. I believe that we should always keep doors open. I believe one of the biggest mistakes you can ever make is feel that because you're in a relationship with an essential other that you close all doors. Because true friendships can last. Very few relationships do. And boy, do we sacrifice a whole lot when we exclude everyone else out of jealousy or fear of competition, when nothing of the sort would have happened. Friends are one of the balancing factors in our life. Men and women need friends. If you think that your relationship will also be your best buddy, that's going to bring an awful lot of stress into that relationship. In any case, so you never know when someone's going to come back into your life that was once there, and you start anew, and what you have is the familiarity of who the person was, but now you got to experience who are they today. And that's fun. That's enjoyable. But time spent with friends in childhood is associated with physical health in adulthood. That's according to data from a multi-decade study. The findings are published in the Journal of the Association of Psychological Sciences show that boys who spend more time with friends as children tended to have lower blood pressure and lower body mass index as men. Quote, these findings suggest that our early social lives may have a small protective influence on our physical health in adulthood. And it's not just our caregivers or financial circumstances, but also our friends who may be health protective. And I agree with that, but I think they've limited themselves. I think it's very important in a nation who is just epidemically lonely. Americans are one of the loneliest people in the world. To have people in our lives can inspire us to be less depressed, more upbeat, more optimistic, to care for ourselves. And therefore I think that we should do a lot more to bring friends into our lives. I'll deal with that on another show upcoming. I'm Gary Null. We're 23 minutes into a program. We're going to take a break. I have a lot of commentaries today. Be back in a moment. Please stay with us. We're going to go to a short video. These are all medical doctors and federal CDC and FDA supervisors deciding about bringing a new vaccine onto the market. Listen carefully to what they say, because we're told, we're guaranteed that these are all tested for safety. Listen in, please.
On using this vaccine at the same time with other adjuvanted vaccines?
We have no data to make a recommendation one way or the other.
So just to sort of put this in context of other vaccines, while preclinical studies were not done using these vaccines simultaneously, our general approach to immunizations is that they can be given at the same time in different limbs.
Dr. Hunter?
Are multiple adjuvanted vaccines used in Europe or other markets?
Dr. Ward, do you want to comment?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. I think unless there's any further discussion, we will take a vote on this recommendation.
I want to remind everyone to please check your voting, whatever, machine thing, and voting is open.
Thank you very much. So the voting is completed, and it is unanimous to support this recommendation. Thank you all.
And does anybody around the table, we don't need to go around and verify our votes, but does anybody have any comments they wish to make about their vote? Dr.
Great.
Simmons?
So just a slight reservation. I think this is a huge advance and a step forward. I am concerned about that signal, that myocardial infarction signal. I am concerned about the use of this new adjuvant and certainly urge us to continue to look at the post-marketing data carefully.
Dr. Hunter?
Just a question about that. How soon would we be getting that post-marketing data update here?
There's two kinds of data. The vaccine safety data link data will require people to be using the vaccine to develop substantive database. And Dr. Sun, do you want to comment on the post-marketing data that FDA is requiring?
I think for the myocardial infarction study, we're seeing that the date or likely for completion is May 31, 2020. There will also be studies looking at autoimmune diseases as well as herpes zoster, and there will be a pregnancy registry as well. So that's all included in the post-marketing surveillance.
Thank you.
Okay, what did we learn? Listen up. We learned that myocardial infarction, that's a heart attack. Herpes zoster, that's a major infection. And they're going to come back with safety data 2 years from now. So they're going to have everyone mandatorily taking this. Then they'll find out what the results are on the people. Then they'll come back and have another decision. And did they know whether or not other countries are using it? No. Did they have any safety data on what happens when you take multiple vaccines at the same time? No. Now, what if this adjuvant is aluminum, which is the most common adjuvant used in vaccines? Mercury's in some, but aluminum. It's a known and proven neurotoxin. In fact, in my newest film, I interviewed toxicologists, and they were appalled at the fact that they're never invited to give testimony about how toxic each and every single ingredient is within a vaccine. There is no such thing as a safe, non-toxic ingredient in vaccines. In fact, the Supreme Court has stated that they are inherently unsafe. But then their argument is, but they're stopping disease. Really? Where's your data? Here's the type of data that you find in the world of vaccines. Let's say that everyone in this audience, and that's a large number of people, were to take vitamin C, 1,000 milligrams every day for 1 year, and you didn't come down with a cold or flu. I could not, with any legitimacy, say that the reason you didn't get the flu or cold is because of the vitamin C. There are hundreds of mitigating circumstances. How much sunlight did you have? Are you living at a northern altitude or southern altitude? Southern in Florida and Texas, California, Arizona, you're going to get more sunlight. That's more vitamin D. That's known to be positive. What about your diet? Are you on a high-protein diet? You're more susceptible to immune dysregulation, especially with your kidneys and your liver being overtaxed. So you have to consider all these factors. Are you in a good relationship, a bad relationship? Do you have any other underlying diseases that could be affecting your health? So no legitimate scientist would say that by taking vitamin C by itself would prevent or reduce the incidence of colds or flu. And yet every single person that takes a flu shot, if you didn't come down with the flu, they give 100% of the credit to the flu vaccine. That would be like saying 1 million women who had breast cancer took radiation and chemotherapy, and of those women who took it, 100,000 or 10% are alive and well today. It's because of the radiation and chemotherapy. There's no science behind that. Nothing. You can't make that statement with any accuracy, and yet all of science is based upon this kind of nonsense. By the way, I also want to say congratulations to Joan Shenton. Joan is the producer and director of a new documentary. It's a short documentary called Sacrificial Virgins, and she just won the Queens Film Festival and in Queens, New York. And if you have a chance to watch it, it's called Sacrificial Virgins. It's all about the mandatory vaccines and what harm they do. I've known Joan for a long time. She's been in a couple of my earlier films, and she's a trooper. She's out there. And by the way, she will be invited into a film festival. It's going to premiere in a film festival. And then the day before, she's called and said they had to yank it because of political pressure. Well, film festivals should not restrict a film because of outside political pressure, meaning the pharmaceutical industry and their trolls and experts. But that's what frequently happens. Happened to her several times, so I'm glad to see that she won this festival. Well deserved. She does really good work. So Joan Shenton, you're doing good work, and we appreciate it. Now, I want to share from our environmental segment from the ecologist Lynn Wycherly, smart meters and cell damage from pulsed electromagnetic radiation are health at risk. I'll just read the first page. The whole article is published on our website. And by the way, I want to thank the 10,500 women and 5,000 men, or 15,500 people who just came on board, just immediately recently. So we're getting an awful lot of people reading the articles, and the nearly 7 million watching the documentaries that we produce on YouTube. 7 million. That's a lot of people watching documentaries. Share them with people too. Quote, smart meters look like a great idea. The downside, they emit as many as 14,000 short bursts of intense microwave radiation a day, disrupting cellular electrochemistry and causing health symptoms from migraine to insomnia, dizziness, anxiety, chest pain, palpitations, and memory loss. Now, a growing number of electrosensitives have had enough. As early as 2012, environmental health professor David Carpenter, founder of Albany School of Public Health and author of 370 peer-reviewed publications, issued a public letter on the plausible toxic risks of intensive pulse microwave smart metering. His letter, Smart Meters Correcting the Gross Misinformation, was rapidly signed by 50 international health experts. Quote, we, the undersigned, have co-authored hundreds of peer-reviewed studies on the health effects of electromagnetic fields. Mass deployment of smart meters could expose large chunks of the general population to alarming risk scenario. More than 1,000 studies done on low-intensity, high-frequency, non-ionizing radio going back at least 50 years show biochemical changes which may lead to diseases. So think of every one of those kids that were out there in the march. Good for them. But the whole time they're taking selfies and got that cell phone glued to their ear, which can increase brain abnormalities, destruction of the telomeres, and all these other health consequences. That can really hurt you. And millions of kids, I believe, in the next 10 years will end up with severe diseases, including cancer, the head, neck, and brain abnormalities because of that. Don't allow a smart meter in your home. They're dangerous. I came back from being on the road and found someone had hooked a smart meter up to my phone. Well, I'm going to tell you, in a heartbeat, I had them on the phone, and I threatened them with a lawsuit if they didn't take it out, and they took it out. You have a right not to have a smart meter. We're looking at Wall Street. One day it's up, 700 yesterday. The day before, a week before, it was down 700 one day, 400 another. It's down 2,100 over 1 week. It's up. People don't know what to make of it. No one can predict it because there's so many unforeseen manipulative controls, including people who understand algorithms, whole computer databases that make trades in milliseconds. But here's the larger picture. There's 3 things that young people should know. 1, Wall Street's not your friend. 2, we don't need Wall Street. If every single firm on Wall Street went bankrupt and all the people working, 165,000 plus on Wall Street, had to immediately go into a psychoanalysis full-time for being alpha male and females, greedy little bastards, then it's little karma in this lifetime because they brought so much pain and suffering to billions of people worldwide. They don't look at you like a human being. They never have. None of them. They're incapable of it. You're a commodity. That's all you are. And because you're impressionable, you're egotistical, you're narcissistic, and you're rather stupid, they figured out exactly how to manipulate you, and they will, to the nth degree. And so when they tell people, you know, it's great to have the run-up in pricing of Wall Street, no, it's not, because it's just a gigantic bubble. Do you really think the people, the corporations that got all that tax break, are going to give that money to their employees with higher wages, higher standard of living? No. No, they're going to buy back their own stock, what are called treasury stock, and that means it'll increase the value of the smaller amount of their stock on the market, and that gives their people in the management higher bonuses. They also didn't pay taxes to begin with. If a major corporation like Amazon has $5.7 billion in net profit and doesn't pay a penny taxes, then how does that help us? A flat tax that nobody could get out of, that you could eliminate the IRS, take away the Federal Reserve, forgive all national debt. It's owed to the banks anyhow, and some foreign sovereign funds, and instead let the Treasury produce money at no interest. Then we wouldn't have this gigantic bubble we're in. And everything is in our society is based upon this crisis. But one crisis nobody's talking about is of what it means today to be a worker, just a worker. Nobody's talking about it, but it's important someone does. This is from Chris Hedges, Truth Dig. The gig, that's G-I-G, economy, is the new term for serfdom. I'll just read part of this. Quote, a 65-year-old New York City cab driver from Queens hanged himself in his garage March 16th, saying in a note he left behind that the ride-hailing companies Uber and Lyft had made it impossible for him to make a living. It was the forced suicide by a cab driver in New York in the last 4 months, including one on February 5th in which the delivery driver, Douglas Shifter, 61, killed himself with a shotgun outside City Hall. Quote, due to the huge numbers of cars available, with desperate drivers trying to feed their families, wrote Shifter, they squeeze rates to below operating costs and force professionals like me out of business. They count their money, and we're driven down into the streets. We drive, becoming homeless and hungry. I will not be a slave working for chump change. I'd rather be dead. He was working up to 120 hours a week, every week for the past 14 years. He and the person who recently committed suicide were 2 of the millions of victims of the new economy. Corporate capitalism is establishing a neo-feudal serfdom in numerous occupations, a condition in which there are no labor laws, no minimum wage, no benefits, no job security, and no regulation. Desperate and impoverished workers forced to endure 16-hour days are viciously pitted against each other. Uber drivers make about $13.25 an hour. In cities like Detroit, that goes down to $8.77. Travis, the former CEO of Uber and one of the founders, has a net worth of $4.8 billion. Logan Green, the CEO of Lyft, has a net worth of $300 million. The corporate elites, which have seized control of ruling institutions, including the government, and destroyed labor unions, are reestablishing the inhumane labor conditions that characterized the 19th and 20th centuries. When workers at General Motors carried out a 44-day sit-down strike in 1936, many were living in shacks and lacked heating and indoor plumbing. They could be laid off for weeks without compensation, had no medical or retirement benefits, and often were fired without explanation. When they turned 40, their employment could be terminated. The average wage was $900 a year, at a time when the government determined that a family of four needed a minimum of $1,600 to live above the poverty line. The managers at General Motors relentlessly persecuted union organizers. The company spent $839,000 on detective work in 1934 to spy on union organizers and infiltrate union meetings. General Motors employed the white terrorist group, the Black Legion. The police chief of Detroit was suspected of being a member, to threaten and physically assault labor activists and assassinate union leaders, including George Marchuk and John Billick, both shot to death. The reign of the all-powerful capitalist class had returned with a vengeance. The job conditions of working men and women, thrust backwards, will not improve again until they regain the militancy and rebuild the popular organizations that seize power from the capitalist. There are some 13,000 licensed cabs in New York City and 40,000 livery or town cars. The drivers should, as farmers did in 2015 with tractors in Paris, shut down the center of the city, and drivers in other cities should do the same. This is the only language our corporate masters understand. The ruling capitalists will be as vicious as they were in the past. Nothing enrages the rich more than having a part of a fraction of their obscene wealth challenged. Consumed by greed, rendered numb to human suffering by a life of hedonism and extravagance, devoid of empathy, incapable of self-criticism or self-sacrifice, surrounded by sycophants and leeches who cater to their wishes and appetites and demands, able to use their wealth to ignore the law and destroy critics and opponents, they are among the most repugnant of the human species. Don't be fooled by the elite's skillful public relations campaigns. We are watching Mark Zuckerberg, whose worth is $64 billion, mount a massive propaganda effort against charges that he and Facebook are focused on exploiting and selling our personal information, or by the fawning news celebrities on corporate media who act as courtiers and apologists for the oligarchs. These people are the enemy. There's a Romanian immigrant. He owned a New York City taxi medallion. Medallions once were coveted by cab drivers because having them allowed the drivers to own their own cabs or lease the cabs to other drivers. He drove the night shift, lasting 10 to 12 hours. His wife drove the day shift. But after Uber and Lyft flooded the city with cars and underpaid drivers, about 3 years ago, the couple could barely meet expenses. His home was about to go into foreclosure. His medallion, once worth $1.1 million, has plummeted in value to $180,000. The dramatic drop in the value of the medallion, which he had hoped to lease for $3,000 a month or sell to finance his retirement, wiped out his economic security. He faced financial ruin and poverty, and he was not alone. The corporate architects of the new economy have no intention on halting the assault. They intend to turn everyone into temporary workers trapped in demeaning, low-paying, part-time service sector jobs without job security or benefits, a reality they plaster over by inventing hip terms like the gig economy. John McDonough began driving in New York City a cab 40 years ago. He, like most drivers, worked out of garages owned and operated by businesses. He was paid a percentage of what he earned each night. You could make a living then, he told me, but everyone shared the burden. The garage shared it, the driver shared it. If you had a good night, the garage made money. If you had a bad night, you split it. That's not the case anymore. Right now, we're leasing cabs at the garages. Leasing requires a driver pay $120 a day for the car and $30 for gas. The driver's shift begins $150 in debt. And because Uber and Lyft and other smartphone ride apps, drivers' incomes have been cut by 50% in many cases. Cab drivers can finish their 12-hour shifts owing the garage's money. Drivers are facing bankruptcy, foreclosure, and evictions. Some are homeless. and that's only one part of his article. It's just to show you the suffering that is occurring right under our noses, and we're not paying attention, and we should be. Now, let's go over, and here, this is, I felt that this was pretty interesting. This is about Walmart and the celebrities who, and of course we can enjoy their celebrities when they're performing, but here they're not performing. They're public relations opportunist for Walmart. Abby Martin takes them on.
Stories about Walmart in the past. But you know, I think the corporation's been given a bad rap. And you want to know why? Because I'm a sucker for advertising. Nothing I love more than pop music and Hollywood celebs. So when Walmart held its annual shareholders meeting in Fayetteville, Arkansas, it was like the perfect storm for me and for the 14,000 Walmart employees that attended. The event featured special in-house performances by award-winning artists like Jennifer Hudson, Kelly Clarkson, and John Legend. And in a surprise twist, heartthrob actor Hugh Jackman graced the stage and spoke very sincerely about a very important subject: how awesome Walmart is. But just when you thought it couldn't get any better, guess who showed up? The Maverick himself, Tom Cruise. Oh yeah, baby, Tom Cruise. One of the most overpaid Hollywood celebrities took to the Walmart stage to speak about why he loves the company so much.
The culture that you have going here is really like no other. The company, I'm sure you all know this, but it is a role model for how business can address some of the biggest issues facing our world.
Come on, man. How much did Walmart pay you to say this crap? Are you really that starved for work right now, bro? But you know what? I actually agree with you, Tom. The culture Walmart creates is like no other. In fact, it's created the blueprint for the global race to the bottom by chasing the highest profits for the lowest wages. Walmart's also been described as an economic Death Star, destroying everything in its path, leaving behind nothing more than a homogeneous wasteland. And although the corporation promises jobs by investing in local communities, instead it decimates small businesses. And Tom, the only role model Walmart serves as is for other monopolistic, vulturistic corporate conglomerates to eat up everything in their paths, throwing their employees under the bus, and also not giving a damn about the public good. So what other glowing compliments did Tom Cruise have to say about the mega giant?
It's using its size and scale to improve women's lives across the world. Walmart is committed to helping people eat better.
Using its size and scale to improve the world, huh? All right, let's talk about its sheer size. The company operates under 55 different names worldwide. Its $447 billion revenue makes it the 23rd largest economy in the world. Guys, that's bigger than the country of Sweden. So let's address how Walmart's massive reach helps improve world businesses and women's lives. Oh, wait, it doesn't. In fact, it does the exact opposite. Right now, the company is embroiled in the largest sex discrimination lawsuit ever filed. Take a look.
Christine is one of the lead plaintiffs in the case against Walmart, and she's accusing the company of discriminating against her and against perhaps as many as 1.5 million other women, former and current employees.
Yep, you heard that right, up to 1.5 million women. So, how else is Walmart destroying the planet? Well, let's take a look back at the devastating building collapse in Bangladesh that just killed 1,129 human beings. See, Walmart is the second biggest garment producer in the country. The company has been there for nearly a quarter century, yet has done nothing to protect its Bangladeshi workers. But to make matters worse, Walmart's also one of the only companies that has refused to sign an international workers' safety agreement that would ensure proper safety standards for its sweatshops. What a good role model indeed. But you know what? I understand. They don't want to lose that couple of pennies on every garment. Because heaven forbid Mike Duke, Walmart's CEO, would have to shave a couple bucks off his $20 million a year salary. A far cry from the $8.81 that the average Walmart employee makes. And if that's not bad enough, the extraordinarily low wages paid to Walmart workers costs taxpayers, you and I, money. Yep, according to a study released by congressional Democrats, Walmart has more workers enrolled in public programs like Medicaid and food stamps than any other employer. This costs taxpayers between $900,000 and $1.7 million per store. So let's do a quick recap. Sweatshops, slave labor, sex discrimination, and looting. Oh wait, I forgot one. According to the Washington Examiner, Walmart has also pled guilty to improperly dumping pesticides into public sewers and landfills. But you better not complain about any of this, because Walmart's notorious for union crushing and suppressing workers from organizing. All of this is why you're seeing an unprecedented strike movement grow throughout the supply chain, with employees nationwide now planning massive walkouts on Black Friday, the company's biggest sales day of the year. Look, don't let yourself be taken by Hollywood stars.
She is correct. I'm going to end the program today by giving you a heads up, something that we're not hearing anything about anywhere, and that is a lot of people. And by the way, for the young people who are demonstrating, sit down and have a conversation with your parents or grandparents, whoever is going to be paying for your college education. What are they going to be living off of? You can't live off Social Security and have any kind of life. It's too little. And by the way, we don't have $2.6 trillion in a Social Security trust fund. That's a complete myth, a total lie, 100% fraud. There is not a penny, not a nickel in the Social Security trust fund. It's all been borrowed. With Ronald Reagan and Bill Clinton and others borrowed it, putting in IOUs. And that's why they're so concerned. They're lying to you when they say, oh, it's funded. No, it's not funded. The government can write a check. It has the capacity. It doesn't have anything backing it up except the good faith in the American government to repay its funds, but that would just increase the debt. So it was never their intention to inform us that they were using our money. Remember, the federal government, contrary to what Paul Ryan and others may want you to believe, never put a nickel into the Social Security of our. We did that. We and our employers put money, each paycheck, into Social Security. In any case, most people who are retiring will live off their pensions and savings. That could change. Why? According to Simon Black, notes from the field, the U.S. pension system has gotten so bad, Congress is actually planning for its failure. That's correct. Congress quietly formed a committee that you haven't heard about, but it's real, to bail out 200 pension funds. And as the government was working on the recent new budget deal and subsequent boosts in government spending, Congress quietly snuck in a provision that forms a committee which would use federal funds to bail out about 200 of these multi-employer pension plans where employers and labor unions jointly provide retirement benefits to employees. But often what is the case, this so-called plan is too little too late. The U.S. pension system is beyond repair. It is collapsing. There is no plan B. What do I mean? Okay. Pensions are simply giant pools of capital used to pay out retirement benefits to workers. Now, typically, employers and employees contribute a percentage of each employee's salary to a pension throughout their career. Then upon retirement, the pension is supposed to pay a fixed monthly amount to the retiree. There are both government and corporate pension plans. Boston College estimates the nation's 1,400 multi-employer plans, corporate ones, are facing $553 billion in shortfalls. And around 1/4 of those are in the red zone, meaning they'll likely go broke in the near future. But Congress's committee, assuming it works, wouldn't even rescue the red zone ones, let alone the 1,200. And it doesn't even begin to address the real problem, the $7 trillion. Listen to what I'm saying, $7 trillion funding gap faced by the government's own pensions. Congress is stepping in because the Pension Benefit Guaranty Corporation, the pension equivalent of the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, is completely insolvent, totally insolvent. And like the FDIC, the PBGC is an insurance program funded by premiums paid by its participating members, meaning the pensions. Its entire income is made up of premiums collected and the investment income it earns on those premiums. So as the markets crash, not only will the pension portfolio get slaughtered, so will those of the pensions it guarantees. And as these pensions fail, then these backup plans will collect less in premiums. It's a vicious cycle. But things are plenty bad already. Remember, the government one, the PBGC, only covers corporate pensions. And they had a $76 billion deficit last year. It has total assets of $108 billion. That's great on its books. But its downside, it has exposure to $250 billion. That's terrible. By its own estimation, its fund to cover multi-employer pensions, which makes up $65 billion in the deficit, will be insolvent in the next few years. So pensions are in such bad shape today for the simple reason that investment returns are very low. The pensions cannot cover their future obligations, and pension managers invest in assets like stocks and bonds and real estate in hopes of generating a safe return. And most funds require 7 to 8% return in order to meet their future liabilities. It's not happening. But with interest rates near record lows, these funds are having to take on big risk in order to get minimum returns. They've reduced their bond allocations and started buying more stocks and private equity and other riskier assets. So funds like Hawaii's pension fund went even further and dabbled in the incredibly stupid put options. Boy, that's suicide. And by selling a put, you collect a small premium if markets stay calm or rise, but you're exposed to unlimited losses if markets crash, like they did when the Dow fell 2,400 points in a week last month. At the end of last year, the equities made up 54% of public pension fund portfolios. And the $209 billion New York State Common Retirement Fund has over 58% of its assets in stocks. These giant funds, which are supposed to pay for public and private employees in retirement, are piling into stocks at record high valuations, and when the volatility hits, it will be devastating. So just keep this in mind. Pension funds should never experience this kind of volatility. They should be safe, and they're not. So pension funds are running at a negative. The government cannot come in and fill in the void. So the bottom line is a lot of people are going to wake up one day, retired, and they're going to get their check, and it's going to be substantially less than what they put in or expected, but they build a standard of living around a supposed predictable and constant income. It's not going to happen. Those days are over. And so just be aware, your pension managers are playing Russian roulette with your future savings, and there's nothing anyone is doing about it at this moment. So when you see the equity market crash, and it will, or correct, and it will, just imagine the trillions of dollars lost are going to be pension funds. And when that happens, say goodbye to doing anything in the future you thought you would be able to do with ease. I'm Gary Null. We're out of time. Thank you all for listening. And tonight, Progressive Commentary Hour, an in-depth look at propaganda and censorship in alternative media and the Internet, and the history of the government's use of the media as a weapon against democracy and its citizens. Professor Mark Crispin Miller joins me for an hour tonight, 7 p.m. on the PRN. Have a nice day.